I see that it's streaming. I'm just not sure, John, that
Yeah,
we have.
yeah,
we have-
one,
Okay.
it has to trickle down to all the other services.
Okay.
One
All right.
moment, which,
It's been a while since we've done this.
yeah. All right, thanks for your patience.
Thank you, John. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Council meeting for January 16th. If you will please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a little mini flag right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is specifically set aside for comments from the public who are asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Any person interested in providing public comment remotely should email publicmeetings@rockyhillct.gov prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting, at which time a link will be provided to attend the meeting, as well as instruction on how to participate. And we just checked, and we do not have public comment at this time. So we will move on to appointments and resignations. And before we get started, I'm just going to ask Councilor Thoreau, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right. So for appointments and resignations, we're going to go through those now, but I just want to take a minute to thank everyone who has volunteered their time over the past couple of years, and for some folks, it may be even longer, to serve on a board or commission or committee or task force. We greatly appreciate your participation and your community service. And on behalf of the council, I want to thank all of you for participating and expanding the volume of voices that are heard in these individual committees and bringing information up to the town council. So with that, we will get started with new appointments and resignations. And I presume you have exchanged information, majority, minority leaders, or how do you have would you like to go committee by committee?
Yeah, we exchanged.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you want to go committee by committee? Or do you want to just do them all at once?
Either way, I'm maybe committee by committee, just so people kind of have it in context, who's on what board.
Okay, why don't we do that? So why don't we start with economic development?
Starting my side of it, Madam Mayor?
Sure. Sure.
Okay. So for economic development, our caucus has Kathy Carone and Alan Smith. Alan is ALLAN.
And on our side, we have Don Whelan, John Roderick, Sean Boyle, and John Valero.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Fair Rent Commission.
So for Fair Rent Commission, we have as full commissioners Chris Bogus and Bill Collins. And as our alternate, we have Giuseppe Morfea.
And on our side is Jeff Tolman, Marty Stiglitz, and Ed Shermer. And the alternates are Don Whelan and Patty Walworth.
Okay. Moving on to Insurance Committee.
Insurance Committee, we have Kathy Alexander. Kathy with a K.
And we have Nick Giuliano and Ed Shermer.
Library Board of Trustees.
Library Trustees, we have Mara Kalin, Caelin, and Nancy Rabbit, B's and 2 T's.
And we have Yvonne Krosky, Dilip Desai, Jerry Yu, and Jennifer Motalga.
Open Space and Wetlands.
We have Sandra Kelly, David Schweitzer, Jody O'Connor, that's Jodi, and our alternate is Melissa Kaplan with a K.
And from our side, it's Todd Brown, Leslie Kurz, Michelle Zack, Scott Stevens, and alternates are Tino Sampino and John Beatty.
Okay. Planning and zoning.
We have Parks and Rec next, I believe, on the list.
Okay. Mine is the other way, but go ahead.
Okay. Parks and Rec Advisory Board, we have Lori Bosky and Jordi Emanuel.
Jordy.
Yeah, I have that spelled Geordie, Emanuel.
Okay.
And on our side, it's Pranab Patel, Drew O'Connor, Katie Margiotta, and Brian Dillon.
Okay.
That's Parks and Rec.
Planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning, we have Alan Mordhorst and Ronald Robbins, and our alternate is Nancy Brescia.
We have Dimple Desai, Victor Zarelli, and Giuseppe Angelico. And we have alternates as Steve Lecco and Sean Hussey.
Okay. Personnel review board.
We have Zachary Van Luling.
We have Dimple Desai and Eliana Thoman.
Okay. Public building commission.
We have Tom Bowden and Sal Ganzi. Our alternate is Steve Longo.
We have Brian Addy, David O'Connor, Todd Marchand, and Frank Morse.
Okay. For zoning board of appeals, I think we have a resignation there.
Yeah, we have a resignation from Brian Addy, and we have Sean Boyle as the appointee.
Okay.
And
And Councillor O'Sullivan, do you have any resignations?
None to report at this time.
Okay. And then with respect to our sustainable task force,
We have Rob Downs and Saima Kusar. Saima, and Kusar is Kousar. And our alternate, oh no, it's not, no, I'm sorry, 3 people, no alternate. The third person is Haritha Nagabandi.
and we don't have any on that right now, as of right now.
yeah, we do. And I'm gonna have
And
to,
that's, yeah, maybe it's an updated list, not an area.
yeah. So if you give me 1 second, I didn't print it. Mhm. All right, let's see. Of course, now when I want to find it, I can't find it. This might be it. All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for that so I don't hold everybody up, and then we can come back to it. And in the, excuse me, in the interim, I also have something for the land acquisition and farmland preservation residents at large, members at large. Do either of you have something to report?
No, I don't. Not in there.
Okay. So I'm showing that Lisa Gilbert and Sabrina Clemens will be serving as residents at large on that subcommittee. Okay, so is there a motion with respect to these?
Yeah, I will make a motion to appoint the aforementioned members to these boards and commissions.
Second,
Okay, any discussion?
Actually, Mayor, I found the list I think you're looking for the Sustainable Tax Force.
Thank you.
Do you want me to just read the names?
Yeah,
Okay, I believe it's, let me just blow this up here. Jack Aylward, Mike Devaney, and John Roderick. Does that sound? like
it
the correct-
does.
Okay,
And we should have one more. So let's just do these for now, and then next meeting we can do that fourth one. Okay, so is there any discussion?
I have a question. What about
Yeah.
Commission on Inclusion?
The commission, yeah, so that doesn't come as appointments from the caucuses. Those names should be presented after we wrap this up, and then we can vote on that as a second issue. Okay, so with respect to these appointments, all in favor? And one resignation?
yeah, I guess just to clarify that those additional names that Jeff provided, which should be deemed a friendly amendment to Pankaj's motion.
Yes, they should.
yes.
Okay. And now let's go to the commission. Is there anything to report on that? Counselor Sullivan, or
I'm sorry, what?
no, it's
Commissioner?
Counselor Thoreau or Counselor Prakash. Do we have any thing to
Yeah.
report on the
Oh,
commission?
yeah, we do, Madam Mayor. As a matter of fact, we met a couple of weeks ago, and me and Councilor Thoreau, as well as Dana, and we looked at the applications and we came up with 3 names for commissioners and 1 alternate. The commissioners are William Kittle, Prem Nagabandi, and Spiro Kroko with the PPROKO. And then the alternate was Megan O'Brien McNamara.
Okay, and the remaining members are already serving and they're on some type of staggered term?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
I think we needed one more alternate, but we didn't have any additional applications, if I recall
Okay.
correctly.
Yeah, you're right. But I think the members are there who are serving the staggered term. But yeah, we do need an alternate to move this one.
okay, so we'll put out, if you're comfortable, we can approve the commission and then we can continue the search. We'll put out notice for one more alternate.
Sure. Yeah, so I will make a motion to fill the vacancies for the Commission on Inclusion and as aforementioned names.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, good. Good. Well, I just want to acknowledge that I appreciate everybody digging deep and welcoming in new faces and new voices. And I know it's not easy because it's hard to get folks to volunteer, and especially at night, it's difficult to make the meetings, and our tasks continue to grow, it seems, on all of these committees. So I thank everyone who stepped up, and you know, it's an ongoing process. You know, inevitably people end up stepping off and new people want to come forward, and to the extent that we can find those new people, we will welcome them with open arms. So let's move on to the approval of the minutes, the town council meeting, December 18th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Two abstentions. Okay, great. Subcommittee reports. Oh. Okay, subcommittee reports.
Yeah, start with finance. Finance, our regularly scheduled meeting was January 11th. We had an issue getting a quorum. So I'd like to thank everybody for rescheduling that meeting for a Friday, January 12th. We were able to get that meeting in. There's two items on tonight's agenda from that meeting. The first is the consent agenda, the Rocky Hill Community Farm Barn Award bid. The Finance Committee has recommended that the bid be awarded to Atlas Residential Commercial Services of Branford in the amount of $151,050. They were not the low bidder, but the low bidder was disqualified for not completing the necessary paperwork and documentation. So the second low bidder was awarded the bid. And I believe the entire bid piece is in tonight's packet. So Atlas Residential and Commercial Services is who was recommended to receive the bid. The second item is our new business tonight, resolution for energy conservation with RLE. I won't go into a lot of detail, but this is basically an opportunity to upgrade LED lighting, rooftop units, chillers, and boilers while receiving an incentive and energy credit from Eversource. Part of the other piece of this is we'll be able to use our solar energy credits as part of the program, and we will able to obtain 0% financing over 6 years or 72 months. Garrett is here to present the full package, answer questions tonight. Because this item does have a cost associated with it, we suggested putting it to the full council for approval. It's not a consent agenda item. And just to start with that, the items that are on the CIP plan are what is being replaced or is what this program is being used for. So it's not new items, it's replacing items that were already in the plan. And we were just able to move that time frame up a little bit, do it in one piece and obtain some credits and 0% financing. But we'll go into further detail on that later this evening. The other portion that we went through, tax revenues right now, we're presently slightly below our 3-year benchmark. Mona has told us not to be concerned. It's just a timing issue from when the money has come in. We've received our first town aid road installment, pilot grant fund, and motor vehicle reimbursement, as well as our PQAT and education cost sharing grant contributions. On the expense side, the only area of, I don't even want to use the word concern, but we're above the budget is really on overtime personnel. Most of that is related to personnel vacancies. So we're utilizing overtime to fill those positions. The highway department is running some additional overtime in preparation for the winter weather. Otherwise, the revenue and expenses were in line with where we expected them. Our next meeting is February 8th at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Government operations.
Government operations met earlier today, just a handful of updates regarding the town buildings facilities. We also discussed the RLE presentation that we're going to have this evening. It'll be under new business section B. One question that came up in finance that we were able to get answered in government operations was I asked about the multi-use cricket field. If the lighting that exists as is will be sufficient for when the changes to be a multi-use field. And they said that we do not have to change any of the placements of the lights, which is good. Just want to make sure we're not going to be having to incur any extra costs there. And we received some more letters of agreement from Eversource with regards to Maxwell Park and the Parks Garage, which is good. So school building projects, the GMS roof project is complete, and we have received first payment for reimbursement. the Stevens HVAC project. We are waiting for an electrical panel. We're hoping to rise by the end of January. It'll take 1 to 2 days to install. With regards to Elm Ridge Park, just a small note on the upcoming pickleball courts. Due to some wetlands and similar issues, there's been a location change for the courts. It's still kind of in the general area, more toward the first base, right field area of Players Field as it exists now. That plan was submitted to Planning and Zoning earlier today, and it's to be part of the upcoming Planning and Zoning meeting agenda on February 21st. They're still targeting to install 6 courts and hope to break ground in the spring. For other items, there are now 2 pickleball courts marked with lines within the senior community center gymnasium, after they were removed a few bleachers to allow for that extra space for the 2 courts. New railings have been installed in between the town hall and the senior community center portions of the buildings to kind of bridge a gap in the original railing system. And the Rock Hill Community Farm Barn project, again, it's going to be award bid tonight as part of the consent agenda. Our next government operations meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February 20th at 5 p.m. via Zoom. Thanks.
Thank you. Public safety?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Public safety did meet this evening at 5:30. I do have a presentation, so John, if you can put that up. Thank you. So let's start with PD. There were 3,087 calls for service and 32 criminal arrests in December, pretty much in line with the December data for prior years. But you will see a little bit more context on this in the following slide when we look at the yearly trends. The Orange PD had 3 active background investigations for certified police officers. That's part of the hiring process, and 1 active background investigation for public safety dispatcher. We started tracking this a little bit because of some FOIA request increases across the board, and this category we are calling support services and administrative requests. We are trying to track FOI requests for records and digital files at the PD, and going forward, like we will be able to get that data. So that is being worked on currently, and so just wanted to call that out because of all the great work that the PD officers are doing at the back end to get that data, and I think that would be a good addition to our police activity data, which we already collect. Community engagement. RHPD was involved in many community partnerships. Some of them I'm gonna show you guys in the forthcoming slides after we're done with the executive summary. Some really great community engagement going on over last several years, but I think it has picked up even more if that can be the case. So a lot to be said there. On the major investigation side, incidents this month, officer was injured while conducting a traffic stop. Everybody saw that probably on social media. Chief Platt told us this evening that the officer has recovered well and has reported back to duty, which is great news. And he also mentioned that there was a stolen U-Haul, a couple of arrests made there, as again, like you might have seen on social media. And what was really need to be called out there is like the LPR cameras, which we have installed last year, around mid 2023, I would say, are working really well, and those were instrumental in those kind of situations, particularly this one on the U-Haul arrest. There was a pedestrian motor vehicle accident on Main Street, which is also currently under investigation. One thing which is not on this slide is recently we had an incident of a stray bullet lodging into a home on Kobe Drive, Kobe Road, I should say, and there were initial investigations that was performed, and it was found that it was coming from this target practice on the outer France Street, where a couple of people were doing target practice. Now, just so that like everybody knows where we are on this, because I have heard a lot of chatter on social media about this, as well as a lot of concerned citizens have sent emails. At least one I got this afternoon, and I just want to make sure, like, everybody knows this is an ongoing investigation according to Chief Klett, and they are looking at all the possibilities. This is not a closed investigation by any means, and anything, any updates on this case are going to be forthcoming. But as of right now, it's an active investigation. So and they are really looking into everything, from regulations to like legalities of like where that ranges and all those things which are which they would normally look at. So again, like I know people are concerned about that incident, so I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the police department and the officers are on it, and it's an active investigation with detectives working on it. All right, moving on to the next slide, John. Thank you. So this is again, this is like the detailed data I talked about, and the calls for service in December was 3,087, like I mentioned, and 32 criminal arrests. But those are consistent with the past years, as you can see here on the slide on the top left. But they are lower than 2021. That's the call out there, and really, it's been pretty like flat, like compared to like that yellow line in 2021, and even like the trending, like lower trending line, the blue line in 2022. So it's been pretty consistent and in line with prior years from a volume perspective. Motor vehicle accidents were trending lower in the last quarter of 2023, which is good. From the perspective of like just from a general policing perspective, I think we need to keep track of the criminal arrest, and generally like about things like things which I will show you on the next slide. If you move on to the next slide, John. Thank you. So we like to track motor vehicle stops as well. If you look at the criminal arrests and you look at the motor vehicle stops, they're both like lower than the prior years. And I did ask Chief Klett about it, and he subscribes that to like, or I should say, he talks that to like a lot of different factors, and one of those is just personnel and like things like that. But I think we are going to keep track of that number. He's very active on that. That we should be very thorough with our enforcement, and that is not lagging in his view, and that is not the reason for those lines to be lower than prior years. So I just want to call that out. That has been a point of focus for Chief Klett, and I think he definitely is going to look into like the impact of like any of those numbers like going down. We don't see anything, and he doesn't see anything, any like implications of that currently. But we are tracking that number, and I think it's anybody who sees this chart and can read like the basic lines there, like can tell that they are lower than prior years. And I think, like I said, Chief Klett is like on it, and like he's not worried about that. I think he sees that as just like being the result of emerging factors, like he talked about. So just wanted to bring that out there. In some good news, catalytic converter thefts are trending down than past years. And like I said, motor vehicle stops are lower, but hopefully they are because there is less criminal activity in town. I mean, that's what the good news there is. Probably a lot of it has to do with that, and then there are other factors. So I just wanted to like call that out because that is good news. If you look at that line for catalytic converters, the blue line, it was off the charts in January of 2022. So that has come down substantially. So some good news there, and great work by the PD. Moving on to the next slide, I did talk about this a little bit in my executive summary. These numbers, like are like essentially like what we try to do in the executive summary is try to take this chart, and this is what people who are watching at home We try to take these numbers, which are all raw numbers, and you have to make a lot of effort to read these. We try to put them in context in the executive summary and the trend lines. So if you are still interested in other categories after police activity, this is the place to go to. Like, you can actually look at all the different categories and raw numbers if you're interested in that. So moving on to the next slide. These are, again, training hours and on areas of like concentration on the training. Again, this is more of like a lot of administrative work that goes on in the PD, as you're aware, probably. And if you're not, this is a good place to like look at and see, how your tax dollars being spent on like training PD personnel. So moving on to the next slide, John. Thank you. So I talked about community engagement a little bit, and PD has done a fabulous job over the last several years. I've been here. This is my third term, and I've been on the public safety for the last two go-arounds and last my 2 terms. And again, there has been emphasis on community engagement. It has never been higher, that emphasis, and I think the PD is doing a fabulous job on things like Prima Cruiser, and they are very active in the schools. Like you can see here, SRO Jordan with Principal Nozick at West Hill. So again, like there is a lot to look at here in terms of community engagement, and I'm very proud of the fact that our PD is not just like policing well, they're also making an effort to be in our community and doing the things like a PD is expected to do in terms of community policing, right? And being present and involved. So I just wanted to call that out. Moving on to the next slide, John, if you can. Moving on to fire. Now, this is really creative. I got these slides from the fire department, Chief Gary, and they are very fiery slides, as they should be for the fire department. I kept them as it is because I was like, I'm not going to tinker with those. Those are like fun slides to look at, especially for a Zoom meeting. I think I needed that little bit of like, pop. So again, like executive summary for 2023, which Chief Gary provided me very graciously. It's kind of sums up the number for 23. The fire department responded to 754 calls in 2023. It's 15% increase from 2022 year over year. And that includes 90 calls from I-91, which were 91 calls, and they have been increasing like, kind of like, over year over year, but hopefully they're like, plateauing out now. So more on those later, actually. I have another chart on that. And then if you look at the recruiting side of things, this year, the fire department has been very active and on social media with recruitment videos, as all of us have seen. Definitely, I have seen a few of them. I'm sure you have come across if you're on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever else. So there is a lot of activity there. They have one new fire police member last year joined, 2 new cadets, and 11 new firefighters. Like I said, like, they are spreading the word well, and they're doing a great job recruiting. Again, like the PD, they have been super involved with community engagement, and they were part of numerous recruitment events, as well as veterans-related events, and numerous other community events outside of those. So moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you, John. So this is the summary for, can we go back, John, for the previous one? Thank you. Or the December one. Sorry about that. I missed that. So December one, like I said, like, if you look at the December numbers in context of the 2023 and prior year numbers, they are very much in line. Out of the 754 calls, 69 were in December. And again, this month was not very different than any other month, like in terms of like the activity or recruiting efforts. I think it is just a continuation of what they started in 23. And I think the December numbers are pretty much reflective of that. Moving on to the next slide, John. Thanks. So if you look at these numbers, like I was saying, like they're pretty consistent year over year. I love these views because I'm able to put them in context. Like the numbers have gone up, obviously, like I mentioned on the executive slide, 15% increase year over year from last year, which is substantial in my view. The question is like where those changes are coming from, and if you look at like volume numbers, they're both on the fire side as well as the rescue side, and there are other categories that they also track, which we are gonna try to get for 2024, like break these down into a little bit more granular data, maybe like have like 5 or 6 big categories which comprise of those rescues and fire. But the trend is unmistakable. Like we can see an increase. We saw a dip in 2022, so the numbers have gone back up in my view. And but it's like I think they are pretty much in line with what we would expect though. So moving on to the next slide. These are like the I-91 numbers, which we have started tracking as well, because these are the numbers which take a lot of bandwidth out of what fire does. And like I said, you know, like keeping track of these numbers is important because they're becoming like a bigger and bigger portion of, or I should say, bigger and bigger part of what we do, right? The 91, and I think if you look at those numbers, they had a little bit of a dip, I would say, like, you know, like a dip in like of 2, like actually it wasn't a dip, but it was 91. I was looking at the year, but really it's like flat. If you look at those numbers, 93 and 91, those are really flat, like from 22 to 23. But it's a big increase from 21, definitely in both those years. So anyway, something to keep track of. This is also something which we get reimbursed from the state, and we have to keep track of that a little bit. I think the numbers there are in like tens of thousands, which we get reimbursed for. I can get the exact number. I don't remember it. I don't want to quote the wrong number, but we get like a substantial amount from the state, which helps us kind of mitigate some of these costs coming to our town. So it's important to note that, and that's why we are tracking these numbers. So I want to make sure people know that, because we are tracking these for a reason, and the reason is this is a big part of what we do here with what our fire department does at 91, on 91, I should say. All right, moving on to the next slide, John. Thanks. So these are, again, personnel numbers. We try to track them because there is a lot of emphasis on recruiting. And as you can see, we are like, in 2023, there were 70 members at the volunteer department. And again, we saw a little bit of a dip, like a small dip in 2022, but this looks like we are back to like the 2020 and 2021 levels. So that's good news. And Chief Gary has told me before that he's not worried about that much about personnel and recruitment. Obviously, they have to keep the focus on there, but I think they're doing a fantastic job there with all their outreach. So moving on to the next slide, like I said, there are a lot of community events which our PD and fire and ambulance are part of, and they're out there. And one of those events was in December, which they were part of. And I just want to give a big shout out to them for being such an active participants in our town. Moving on to the next slide. And let's go with like the Rock Hill Volunteer Ambulance Association. Here's a executive summary. Going to the next slide. Here is their website, rsva.com. If you haven't been on there, just to call out, they provided me that that slide, and I wanted to just make sure like people know they have a website there. So the emergency responses in December were in line, like most of other departments, public safety departments, and from prior years, 152 in December and 1462 in 2023. We will see some of that context when we look at the trend lines. And then average response time was in line with, again, like prior years. It's around 7 minutes for hot responses and 8 minutes for cold responses. And falls are the biggest category. Again, we'll look at that a little bit in the next few slides. But I just want to call out there are 50 total members in the volunteer ambulance. And according to Chief Goodrich, most of those 50 are like active and like they kind of rotate around. And there are 4 probationary members and 6 associates as of this evening. That's the number we have. So again, like I said, like all our volunteer members from PD to fire to ambulance are very much involved in the community, and they're pretty much like a package, and they have been doing some great work. We'll see some of that later as well. So moving on to the next slide. Again, I said that there are 50 members. There's a new member application one, like they provided me today. Yeah, the EMT class starting in February, and they're trying to reinforce the importance of service to the town and financial incentives, tax abatement, pension, etc., to get more recruits. Again, they provided me these slides, and I'm happy to like share this with you guys because there's a lot goes on in these departments, and I think it's great to like highlight some of this good work. So moving forward to the next slide. So again, this is the trend line. Again, not a big surprise. Like I was saying, like, you know, if you look at the 5-year average, pretty consistent, like not moving like too much. And even like if you look at the bar charts there or the bars in the bar diagram, like you see like a lot of consistency there. So moving on to the next slide, John. The falls are the biggest category. They respond to the 42% comes out of that, and there's a lot of, I mean, we have a lot of like senior homes and things like that, so it's kind of expected, but it's worth looking at these things on a year-to-year basis. Opioid related events, they're, I mean, the charts on the chart on the right can look a little like, you know, those numbers are very small, which is great news. So I mean, if you look at the scale, it can be a little like, you know, going up and down and, you know, being everywhere, right? But those are so small numbers that even a small change like kind of moves it too much, moves it a lot. So just nothing, we just keep to track those things, and so that we are not missing anything there from a public health perspective. Moving on to the next slide. Cardiac arrest, we like to definitely, this is one of the metrics like the ambulance likes to follow, which is the cardiac arrest occurrences and their dispositions. And again, they're small numbers, so they can be volatile, but this is something we like to track. It is one of their metrics, like, you know, which they like to track and they like to good at. So this is again like nothing exceptional here. It's been trending down, but again, like these are small numbers, right? Like, so I wouldn't like worry. Like, I mean, I wouldn't like put too much stock in like the trend line here because like the lines are like, I think really like the question is really like how are we doing in general? Are these numbers going up? And they're not going up, which is great. Like the trending helps us there, but it's a small sample, so it's bound to be volatile. Going forward, next slide, John, please. So here is some of the training work they do. They start putting in training and like what they're doing there. Like they had 15 hours of training this month in December and 6 hours of like, so that is the internal training. They had like 56 hours of external training with childcare CPR training classes and medication disposal class, etc. Again, they provided me this deck, and I want to give them a big shout out because they are a volunteer organization, and I want to like make sure like people know that they have full-time jobs and they still like, you know, are involved in the community just like us, and they do their job to the best of their abilities. And I just wanted to make sure like this does not get lost in that. So moving on to the next slide. So okay, so I will move to the next slide, one more. Okay, so this is like a great segue to go into the next one, which is the Aetna ambulance. And they do work with Aetna ambulance, as you know, as all of the council knows, but people out there, it's not just the RH volunteer ambulance, but they also have Aetna as their partners, which is a private service, right? And they try to work very closely with them, and they like to like transports and paramedic and everything else. And I think the relationship is generally pretty symbiotic, I guess that's the word. And moving on to the next slide, on that note, this is a summary from Aetna. So the Aetna, moving on to the next slide. Thank you, John. So Aetna, the responses there, like 299 responses and 210 transports. But what I would like to point out is 90% of on-time performance, which we like to track. The 90%, if you ask Aetna, they are not very satisfied with it. They want to push it to like 95, 96, 97%. That's what their goal is. At least they want to hit 95. So this is something, on-time performance is a metric they like to track, and we like to track as a committee. So I think they're doing pretty good, but I think there's room for improvement here. I have mentioned this before, that the cardiac arrest numbers with 58% of survival rates with like the bystander CPR is a pretty high number, and they're very the 47.9% number is the survival number, and they like to point that out every single time we do one of these reports. And because they say like Rock Hill, that number is like really remarkable. So I wanted to call that out as well. Again, the top 5 EMS responses, the big one is like fall always, one or two categories, and that's the case with Aetna as well, right? So going forward, next slide, John. So again, we like to track these numbers going back to 3 years, and what you will see is pretty consistent numbers here. Not like really anything worthwhile to like, kind of pick on or like be alarmed about, right? It's very, very flat and very consistent. So moving on to the next slide, John. Opioid responses. This is again like just like Rock Hill Volunteer Ambulance. We like to track that for Aetna. Again, the falls on the right side. If you look at the nature of the calls, the falls are a pretty big category, just under, pretty much tied with like sick person and the other category. So again, the top 2 or 3 categories are pretty consistent, whether you look at the RHVA numbers or you look at the Aetna numbers, and that's what you would expect, right? If I was looking at it as an outsider, I think that's what I like to see, like consistency probably, because these are 2 different systems. Moving on to the next slide, John. These are the cardiac arrest numbers with Aetna ambulance. Like looking at these numbers, you can see that the monthly average is generally higher, like after like July, like they kind of get back to normal. Like I think those are lower numbers, and like you can look at this data, which is very fascinating. If you look at like some seasonality in this data, if you look at it, and that's pretty, striking to me, like some of that seasonality, like how it goes up and down. Even if you look at the averages, right, for over like last 3 years or whatever, right? So anyway, I mean, this is again something we like to track, just like Rock Hill Volunteer Ambulance. And then moving on to the next slide, they have a lot of equipment which they like to, renew and like buy and purchase. And like, one of those is this new Sapphire medication pumps. I've been told that they are like a medication administration device, like you would have in a hospital, right? And it gets to that level, like where they can administer a medication like pretty accurately. So I think, yeah, they wanted to call that out, and I think that's pretty neat. So moving on to the next slide, John. Last 2 slides here, and like I said, like they are pretty. Both of them, the volunteer ambulance as well as Aetna, they are always on recruiting trails, and like they have had like new recruits, and they have hired like 13 employees in the last few months, I think. So moving on to the next slide, they're also involved in a lot of volunteer, like they're involved in a lot of community activities, I should say. They're a private organization, but and they like to fund that out. And I'm glad that they're involved in their communities. I think they work really well with for that reason with the RSVA. So moving on to the next slide, last two slides, and this is the health district. There are only two things to call out here, which Mr. Brown, Charlie Brown, wanted me to really highlight is that the COVID numbers are on the rise, and as you can see, like December, those numbers like really spiked up, and most of those are like in our long-term facilities, long-term care facilities, I should say. And again, this is not a surprise; they have been going up everywhere, but definitely something to call out here. These numbers are as of January 8th. And moving on to the last slide, John, we have an influenza like illnesses. I don't want to call it outbreak because he'll be really upset with me because that's not a technical term for him probably. But what I mean by it is if you look at October, November, and December data, it's trending higher than the 5-year average. I mean, I'm not a health professional, but I can see that number, and like it's definitely trending higher. And I think it seems like it's something we should pay attention to. And I think that's what the message is from Charlie Brown as well. And he just wants you to take good care, wash your hands, take all the precautionary measures and get those vaccines. That's his message. And that's the report. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Councilor Prakash, I certainly appreciate the brevity of all this information. Is this the new standard for a monthly report?
Yeah, this is the standard for my presentation.
So this is going to happen every month?
Yep.
Is there any way you could pare it down at all to fewer slides? Because I mean, we've seen this and this presentation for 35 minutes. And again, I agree with a lot of the information. If people want more detail, they'd be tuning into the Public Safety Committee. I think this type of detail warrants more of like a quarterly or bi-yearly type of thing to the council. But 35 minutes for a subcommittee report, I think is a little too detailed. The purpose of the subcommittee report is more of a summary of what's happening. If people want the details, they'll certainly join the Public Safety Committee. So I just wanted to provide that feedback. And also the point about Aetna, Aetna's a vendor. So we wouldn't normally keep track of their personnel unless it impacts their service to Rocky Hill.
Yeah, and that's how that's a separate point which we can actually talk about, John. The reason for that is to actually make sure that the taxpayers of this town are getting the services. And
well, the taxpayers, taxpayers of this town are paying some of the contract, but most of their income is coming from the billing, and
sure.
The Rocky Hill Ambulance pays a portion too.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to discuss the details of it. I take your point and I would consider it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If I may?
Yes.
I guess I'd like to echo John's point about the nature of committee reports. I mean, the meeting was at 5:30. I feel like I sat through the same meeting twice. And again, for those, whether it's citizens or members of this council who are interested in that level of detail, they are free to read the minutes, to watch the meeting, attend the meeting, watch the live stream. All that information is right there for anyone who wants that level of detail. But again, my understanding of the summary reports, which are typically in the range of 5 minutes or so, which is perfectly adequate. That should suffice for all the committees, and I don't think we need in effect a complete rehash of the report for purposes of these summaries. So I agree with Brother Emmanuel on that. Thank you.
All right. I'll consider your point as well, which is the same. Great.
Okay, moving on, senior liaison.
Got to come off mute first. Senior liaison has not met. We are scheduled to meet on January 22nd. However, Gina Marino did provide me some information she asked me to share on a particular event. They have the Connecticut Department of Aging and Disability Services, this called the State Unit on Aging, SUA, is going to be holding a community conversation at the Rocky Hill Senior Center on Wednesday, February 7th, between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. Registration is requested, but not mandatory. They can either email agingstateplan@ct.gov or call 860-424-5111 to make a reservation for that event. Again, our next meeting is January 22nd at 5 p.m.
Okay, land acquisition and farmland preservation.
No report, Madam Mayor. We didn't meet last month because of the proximity of the holidays. We are meeting next week, though.
Okay. Liaison to the state rep and the state senator.
Yes, I reached out to Representative Wood. She has a few updates she'd like me to share. So our Mayor Murata, the Mayor Weathersfield, and Representative Wood all met with the DOT Commissioner and the staff to discuss safety improvements along the Silas Deane Highway. As you may know, both towns won a state grant and will be coordinating improvements in conjunction with the state over the next few years. Coordination of the installation of speed cameras is also ongoing. Representative Bello and Representative Wood are hosting a Connection to the River event at OC Kitchen on January 7th, which is tomorrow. Everyone is welcome to attend that. Operation Fuel enrollment period opened on January 8th and closes March 1st. Representative Wood announced this via email and social media and let Gina Marina know at the Senior Center know as well. Anyone that needs help applying can reach out to the representative's office. And lastly, she's working with DEP and keeping the town residents informed of the notice of violation to the former landfill run by Meadows Property LLC. I also reached out to State Senator Lester's office and did not get a response to my email request with any information. Thank you.
Okay, school liaison.
So I just have one quick update on the schools, which is the budget workshops for the BOE are scheduled to be held on Tuesday, the 23rd of January at 6:30 in the council chambers, and on January 25th in the council chambers at 6:30 as well. So I would encourage people to watch that. Big budget implications, and that's the report.
Okay, capital improvements committee.
Capital Improvements Committee only meets quarterly, so we have not met. I did look at the calendar. I did not see when we are scheduled to meet again. I went out through April, so we just may need to update the town calendar for that.
Gotcha. And economic development subcommittee.
That committee only meets when there are grant or abatements, so we have none before us, so we have not met.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, Rocky Hill Community Farm Barn Award and Bid.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we move on to old business, we do have a guest who's been waiting.
Yeah, Mayor, remember, I'd like to make a motion that we move new business item 8-B, discussion possible action resolution energy conservation RLE to precede old business.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So if I may, I'm going to introduce Garrett Kudman from RLE. I know we've discussed this at Government Ops and Finance, but to the whole council, we wanted to present that we've been working. Phil Sear, who isn't able to attend this meeting, has been working many months together with RLE and Eversource and Finance to come up with this particular project. We're looking at about $2.3 million of upgrades, be it lighting, mechanical upgrades. We're looking at rooftop units that are over 22 years old that are showing up on our repair invoices. You have in your packet, I won't go into all the line item detail, but you have a resolution, but you also have a spreadsheet that shows you these are items that were actually planned for the CIP budget upcoming, these older items one at a time. And this gives us the opportunity to do a 72-month, 0% financing, getting our lighting upgraded, mechanicals upgraded, and still basically be at that same dollar amount we would be bringing forward in the year-to-year CIP plan. So without going into further detail, I'm going to pass it on to Garrett Kudman from RLE. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mona. First off, Mayor Marotta, it's a pleasure to meet you. I was looking forward to meet you in person this evening, but I will take the virtual. I am going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint. I'll go through it as quick as I can. And just hit on really the major talking points. But like Mr. Greenspan and Ms. McKim have discussed so far, this project is a lighting and HVAC mechanical project across multiple different town-owned facilities in Rocky Hill. Just so you know what to anticipate, I'm going to do a quick summary again on who we are as a company, and then we'll get into the sustainability portion of the project, review the scope of work, and then end with everybody's favorite section, the financing. So, and for the record, if anybody has any questions at all throughout the process, throughout the presentation, please stop me and ask any question as we progress through. So. Without further ado, just so everybody's aware, Resource Lighting and Energy is a veteran-owned small business. We provide turnkey design build energy solutions. We work directly with municipalities in both Massachusetts and Connecticut, as well as commercial industrial projects across the country. We're subcontracted under UI and Eversource in the state of Connecticut, so we function directly underneath the local utility companies as their subsidiary. Our three core values: partnership, reliability, and sustainability. Like I mentioned, we are a veteran-owned small business, so we do try to use made in America products whenever possible. And then, of course, sustainability. We are an energy efficiency company, and our goal is to not only reduce utility costs and utility consumptions for municipalities in Connecticut, but also to improve their current energy footprint standings. So kind of a summary of what we've invested so far up till now. And keep in mind, we like to do these projects, the initial investment we do at no cost to municipalities. We find it's the easiest way, not only to get into the door, but also to work directly with members of the town. When they know that they don't have to dish out the cash for it, it makes a lot more harmonious relationship, and we tend to cover a lot of ground much quicker. So the no-cost energy audits we conducted was about 20 hours worth of time. The data analysis was 47 hours. We do have in-house mechanical engineers, electrical engineers that work directly with members of towns, specifically facilities, and we ensure that all the data that we collect meet Eversource's standards. Eversource is a regulated monopoly, so we do have a lot of rules that we need to follow throughout this process to get to this point. And then developing the turnkey proposal and utility admin, again, is developing the project that you will see today, and then working directly with Eversource to verify that the incentives we present, the dollar savings, and the data that went into those calculations are as accurate as possible. So a total time investment so far of about 131 hours, not including Mona and Phil's precious, valuable time that they've been willing to donate till now. So The programming question, there's actually a couple different programs that are going into this project through Eversource, but the biggest one that everybody should be aware of is the Energy Efficiency Program. This is the last year, 2024 is the last year to take advantage of this program. It was actually set to expire in December of 2023. But due to a heavy influx of municipalities across the state of Connecticut, Eversource didn't have enough time to process all the applications and decided to extend it one additional year. So really the biggest thing on this slide that everybody should be aware of is lighting will become code in 2025, meaning you're going to lose a lot of incentives behind upgrading lighting fixtures. Additionally, there is going to be a lot of reductions across other energy efficiency measures as Eversource transitions those funds over to their electrification program. And the electrification program is, in essence, just electrifying HVAC systems. Any questions so far? I know I'm talking a little fast. I do apologize. So if I'm speaking too quick, make sure to call me out for it. So any questions so far? Very good. So these are the items that we reviewed: lighting, heating plants, including boilers, furnaces, and pumps, chillers, cooling towers, HVAC systems, mechanical systems, rooftop units, HVAC controls, building management systems, and hot water heaters. And now we are going to get into sustainability. So this project provides savings of just over 137,000 kilowatt hours a year and just over 6,300 therms a year. To put that into perspective, that is the equivalency of, in terms of energy, burning 257,000 pounds of coal. So when you look at these numbers, 45 homes worth of electricity in 1 year, it's quite substantial in terms of electricity and gas savings that these projects encompass. Summary of savings. So I'm going to start with LED lighting. This is a Musco product. You guys have Musco existing so far, and this is specifically for the sport fields as well as the high school gymnasium. Total turnkey cost for the LED lighting upgrade is just over $1,002,000. Estimated incentive from Eversource based on the KWH savings is $75,282. And annual energy savings across the facilities is just over $37,000 a year. And the most important thing to note on this is that with a Musco product, which would be installed at all of these sports fields, they come with a 25-year part and labor warranty, meaning if anything happens with either the control system or the fixtures themselves within the first, within 25 years from installation, part and labor are both covered under that warranty through Musco. And if we decide to move forward with the project, we'll do a full overview of how to navigate, those warranty programs with any and all faculty interested in learning more about it. Any questions on the lighting portion of the project? All right. Now the other half is HVAC mechanical. So this portion is just over $1.4 million, and this includes 3 RTU replacements at the town hall, boiler replacements at the town hall, electric hot water heaters and heat pumps at the library, chiller replacement at the police station, VFD installation at the police station, 5 forced air furnaces at the town highway garage, electric hot water heaters at both the town highway garage and the parks garage, and then piping installation across all 3 firehouses. This portion of the project includes $31,000 in incentive, over $10,000 annually in energy savings. And to look at everything all together, this is an all-encompassing scope of work. So this includes lighting, pipe insulation, heat pumps, and forced air furnaces, all the measures that we just discussed. The total combined project total is $2,403,707. Now, it does come with a total incentive from Eversource of $106,470. It's important to note that the incentive is essentially just a discount. So this project, and I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself, but this project qualifies for Eversource's on-bill financing. Now, most municipalities across the state of Connecticut within Eversource's territory pre-qualify for $5 million in on-bill financing. Depending on your bond rating, you can go up to 84 months. Measures also are taken into factor, but you can finance between 5 and 7 years. For the measures included on this project, we did speak with Eversource. It does qualify for the 6-year duration, so the 72 months. And again, this is financed directly on your utility bill at 0% interest. Eversource is highly incentivized to get a lot of these measures done prior to transitioning a lot of these funds over to their electrification program. So there's also some additional incentives that are not reflected on this proposal, which is important to note. I would also mention that the incentive RLE is offering a guarantee on it. Now, so far, the LOAs that we've seen come in from Eversource so far all have higher incentives than initially anticipated, which is great because, again, the way the incentive works is it's essentially a discount on the turnkey cost. The way the on-bill financing works, and I want to make sure that everybody fully understands this portion of the process, and please chime in with any questions once I go through this slide. Eversource functions as the primary, we'll call them GC for the project. So the binding agreement would be directly between the town of Rocky Hill and Eversource in the form of a letter of agreement or an LOA. The other thing that everybody should be aware of is once the LOAs are signed, that on-bill finance, whatever the loan repayment cost is, does not appear on the utility bill until after the project's been installed and a final site walkthrough is completed by Eversource. So in a hypothetical situation, say the town decides to move forward with this project, you would not see any of these costs appear on your utility bills until after the project's been completed and Eversource conducts their final inspection. The other thing to note is that there's no out-of-pocket cost at any point. We at RLE actually pay the upfront costs and deliver all the materials and complete the work, and then we get paid directly by Eversource after the project's been completed and the final inspection passes. So before we review what the monthly costs look like, does anybody have any questions on the Eversource on-bill financing or the scope of work or any measures included in that scope of work?
A question.
Just actually,
Go
ahead, Pankaj.
I had a question. The scope of work, how long do you think this would take place over time period?
Yes, good question. So it depends on the number of measures you want to do. I would say at the latest, everything would be completed, substantially completed by the end of December of this year. Not to say that you won't see any bills until 2025, but it really depends on which measures you elect to move forward with. Some of the material on this list does have some longer lead times. Right now we're looking, I would say, for RTUs and chillers could be in the 20 to 25 week range. So if we decided to move forward with this project, that material probably wouldn't arrive until mid-summer, late summer. Not to say we can't get it sooner. We have a wide variety of vendors that we can utilize. But I would say, yeah, in terms of completion or in terms of we'll say the tail end, I would say 20 to 25 weeks would be a conservative estimate.
Thank you.
Of course.
Actually, my question is for Mona. First of all, I'm all for this, Garrett, because I think Eversource's incentives are reducing for 2024 in certain areas. But Mona, when we switched over the town roads to LED, I recall after I think a year and a half that there weren't substantial savings. So I just want to make sure that this proposal is accurate in terms of the proposed savings from where the bulbs are now.
Right. Yeah, I think what we were seeing, and I wish Phil was here to chime in on this one, but what we were seeing were the savings in the kilowatt usage, but unfortunately, we were also dealing with increase in pricing from Eversource. So if anything, if you look back at that budget line for the street lighting, it tended to just kind of run at a level pace. And it was more just keeping us in line with, as the prices went up, we were seeing the savings. So savings is there. And I hate to say, I imagine that Eversource will probably be increasing prices. And as much as this looks wonderful, and no doubt we can't control the pricing on that. So we don't want that to cloud the fact that this is really a great plan.
Okay, nope, totally agree. Thank you.
Any additional questions? And actually, John, I'll add on to that just so you have an extra level of comfort with the numbers that you're seeing here. The KWH and therm savings that we present are very conservative. And the reason for that is we want to ensure that whatever we provide in front of a town, those numbers can be trusted completely. And we're very well aware of the budgets that towns are operating on right now, especially with the increase in cost across the board. I would also add that if there is any discrepancy in terms of what the savings are that we receive from Eversource in terms of verification, that comes through the form of the LOA that needs to be signed with Eversource. So I'll give you a hypothetical. If the town decides to move forward with this project and it turns out that we'll say the lighting, it only comes in at 40,000 kWh, and that just isn't good enough. That's a deal killer. Well, that LOA with Eversource needs to be signed in order to lock in this project. So the proposal that's signed on our end is non-binding, and it can be null and void in full, or reworked in any way to meet the requirements on the town's end. So just as an additional level of, security or trust is once we do receive that official LOA from Eversource, if the numbers don't look good, or if it's something that's unfeasible or doesn't meet the initial agreed upon course of action, the town does reserve the right to back out of that portion of work. So just would like to reiterate that. Any additional questions? I do have a couple. We'll say one last quick slide, and I just wanted to go over what the monthly costs were. And that would be if this was financed over a 72-month duration. Again, the big number here that you want to focus on is the finance amount. This is not the turnkey cost. Whatever we receive in incentives is deducted from what is financed on your utility bill. So I know we're anticipating incentives totaling $106,000 across all the different measures in scope. That number more than likely will be more. Like I mentioned, the LOAs we've received so far on some of these measures that we submitted to Eversource a few months ago, or I should say late November, are more than what we were anticipating. So this total finance number, if anything, will be lower than what you're looking at now, meaning the monthly payment would also be less than what is to be expected. The other thing is, although the finance or the repayment plan is $31,900 a month, it's also important to note that you do have energy savings that offset a portion of that cost. What we're anticipating conservatively to be just shy of $4,000 a month. So really your net increase, or the net total cost that you can anticipate, is $27,955 if you elect to move forward with the 72-month loan repayment plan. And again, that is at the absolute most. If anything, it should be a couple dollars less once we receive more of these LOAs. Are there any additional questions from any of the council members at this time? More than happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Part of what John was getting at, that $3,900 savings, that may deteriorate with the increased cost of the kilowatts, right? So though that might be the first, year's worth of payments, it's probably going to be less going forward, as long as we even maintain the kilowatt savings, so.
Yes.
And then Mona, the only other question I had, we brought up last meeting, was something about the solar credits.
Yes.
And we weren't sure whether we could, use them towards this, but I think the answer earlier was we could.
Yes, and I don't expect anyone to go back and read that very detailed spreadsheet, but what that was showing is that we have accumulated probably a larger amount of solar credits that are kind of getting ahead of our utility bill. So that first year, we should be able to take probably a good chunk. I'm putting in an estimate at this point of 150,000. We've accumulated about 300,000 of solar credits. So it'll give us an opportunity to take that. Future years, after that, I'm going very conservative and saying that it's probably once we do that catch up on the solar, that a reasonable estimate would be about $50,000 of our solar credits can be apportioned to this particular project. So
Per year.
yeah, again, we are looking at obviously that annual payment, the 380,000 offset by solar credits, offset by energy savings. So it still is an increased line item, but again, you won't see these large ticket items showing up, $200,000 rooftop units and so forth.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we'll have ongoing solar credit.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Good questions, good questions. Any other
Mom,
questions?
I have
with
a
this?
question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes, I have a question. I noticed in your summary, it says that the LED fixtures have an average life of 12 years when they do not have controls and 18 years with controls. So let's say, I don't know what the controls are, but how about the other things, the boilers and the hot water heaters and stuff? What is their useful life?
Yeah, absolutely. So all the measures that you see here would be a prime energy efficient replacement. As long as they're maintained, you can anticipate boilers typically have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years before they start encountering, significant issues. And I want to be, careful with saying that because there are obviously cases where boilers may go 30, 40, 50 years without having any major problems, depending on the manufacturer and what the fuel source is. But the typical life expectancy or time frame before you want to consider replacing for boilers is 20 to 25 years. Every other measure is usually around that 15 year mark. Again, it depends on if they're maintained properly, what purpose that system may be serving, and the fuel source, again, all do, contribute to it. But yeah, I would say for most of the measures on here, 15 years is the minimum. Boilers, 20 to 25 years is typically the minimum that we see. So.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions at this time regarding any of the measures or the on-bill financing, or any other related questions to the energy efficiency project? Very good. And I know Mona has my contact information. So if anybody does have any follow-up questions or if they're curious about anything, I'll make sure to have her distribute my cell phone number and email to everyone. Feel free to contact me at any time. But that concludes my PowerPoint. Thank you again, everyone, for your time this evening. I really do appreciate it. And I am going to pass it back to Mona.
Okay. So as we said in the packet, there were 3 sheets. One, obviously, that Garrett went into detail, the summary of the costs, and of course, we have a resolution. If anyone wants to entertain that, that would allow us the ability to move forward with this project. And again, as Garrett said, we were looking at these incentives through the 2023 year, and we've had the opportunity to go through the month of January. So if we'd really like to be able to move forward and not miss out.
Mona, just for discussion purposes and just to put it out there, in our finance meeting, from what I understood, is while this is a full package, we don't have to opt to do the full package, right? But
That's correct.
at that point, we would lose the financing and some of the incentives from Eversource. But I just, I think it's important that I put that out there. So if anybody sees a particular item that is concerning, we could have that discussion.
Right.
The other piece that we did discuss at the finance meeting is that right now we have a bunch of rooftop units that are 22 years in age. They're hitting our budgets with repairs annually. As I said to Phil at that meeting, we wouldn't want to not do our maintenance. We'd want to continue doing maintenance even on the new unit. So there'd be some additional offset potentially by not having repairs associated with newer units.
Correct. Yes, and in fact, if we did, and that's why we looked at the presentation in two components, the LED, which is obviously that time sensitive 2024. If Phil was here and he made me bullet points to remind everyone that come 2024, it was a construction industry standard that we we're going to. So that would obviously be the obvious one we would choose. However, from the financial point of view, these large items, if you're looking at them on that CIP budget, these are the large $280,000 pieces, one after a year, 3 in this town hall building, each of them the same age, 22 years old. So we'd really be taking the chance of, hopefully they would go one by one and before or after their age. So it's all together. I think it's a sensible package.
I would also add that first payment you probably won't see on the earliest until end of July, August. Because again, that payment doesn't hit until after the project's been installed and that final inspection is completed. Usually it's within a month or two after that first loan repayment appears on your utility bill. Just to also, I just wanted to reiterate that. So
right, good point, and that's precisely why this is presented as first. Basically, first impact to the budget is the 24-25 year, not this current year. Good point, Garrett. Thanks.
Mona, have you been tracking it? Is there any extensive repair cost on some of these items that are pointed out here?
Actually, there are, and as I said, wish that Phil was able to attend, but something came up, and he did give me some of these maintenance items. I know, for example, the HVAC units are 2002 items. He's put over $25,000 into repair on that particular. A chiller unit, again, is a 2005. Over the past few years, $26,000 in repair. I know he probably gave me a lot of other numbers that I'm not catching quickly, but yes, we're definitely looking at consistent repair items. So hopefully once we get these things in place, that you'll see probably the following year an offset of maintenance costs. We're probably not as ambitious to say we would reduce repair and maintenance in the first year coming in, but definitely have to give that a serious look the following.
Thank you.
Okay, well, it seems to me like there's not much risk associated with us moving forward. I don't know if there's further discussion that you want to have.
I mean, Alan, I trust on the finance committee, I'm just looking at the capital improvement allocations going out. And roughly until 2028, 2029 to 30, we're almost covering the payment with the capital improvement budget already, and that doesn't include necessarily the maintenance savings or the or the energy bill savings that we've seen. Because roughly we have 350,000 on the budget for 2024 to 25, little lower to 286 and 286, but again, I think you're almost within shouting distance of that cost anyways. Did you look at, obviously you discussed that, I'm gonna trust?
Yeah, we did. And Dave, in 24-25, I know it's highlighted, but the police generator replacement is actually not part of this plan. That's part of a separate grant that Ray is going to mention in his town manager's report. But so that number's 319 in the first year. But you're right, we're on par. And what we're doing is we're putting newer products into service in a rapid period of time instead of stretching them out over the length of the CIP plan, which is kind of what was done on purpose from budgetary purposes when we didn't have the option for the incentive and the solar credits to be utilized.
Right. Got it. Yeah, no, I mean, that seems to make sense for me. We stretch it out at 0% interest for 6 years.
Yep.
You know, and luckily some of these things are going to have a lifespan that they don't end their actual estimated lifespan at the same time. You know, in other words, 20 to 25 years for the boiler, 12 years to replace LED lighting. You know what I mean? So we kind of, personally, it sounds pretty solid.
Well, I think the other thing to consider too is that this new equipment will be more energy efficient. So there's going to be savings there too, with like SEER ratings and stuff like that.
And as one additional side benefit for the sport fields, the lights go on immediately versus the 15 to 20-minute delay. So
where were you 15 years
part of
ago?
those? That's a big deal.
So I do have one question that Councilor Thoreau kind of brought up is LED lighting lasts 12 years based upon the proposal, but we have a 25-year warranty. So how does that play into the conversation?
Good question, actually. Now, keep in mind, these are sports field lighting. So the runtime hours are a lot less than what would be in a typical office or classroom, right? I think we anticipated 300 hours or 360 hours annually for operation, which is a fraction of what it's typical annual usage is 2,100 hours plus. Now, with that being said, if the lights all petered out 12 years down the road, they are fully covered under Musco's warranty and that is specifically for the sports field lighting, which is a majority of that. I would say 85% of that cost is all just the sports fields. And then it also includes basketball, tennis, and then, like I said, a small LED upgrade at the gymnasium. But yes, the other thing I would mention, if something does happen with an LED, typically it happens within the first year. In fact, I would argue within the first 3 months of it being installed. So if these fixtures were put in at the beginning of baseball, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen almost right away. Once it kind of gets through that first 3-month cycle, I mean, the typical lifetime for sports field LED lighting is a lot longer than 12 years, but having that 25-year part and labor warranty is essentially just a reassurance of that. Because Musco is I used this term before, like the Cadillac of sports field lighting. They do major sports fields, major arenas. There's really no other product you could compare it to. And because of that, they offer these warranties as reassurance that you are getting the best of the best. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. If there's no further discussion at this point, I'll make a motion to approve the townwide energy conservation project as noted in our council packet.
I'll second.
Lisa, you're on mute.
Oh my gosh. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett.
Thank you.
I appreciate that comprehensive report.
Of course. Thank you again, Mayor. And again, everybody, I appreciate your time this evening. Mona, I will give you a call tomorrow morning and we can review next steps. Thank you again,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank
You might want to think twice about giving everyone your cell phone number, though.
The more calls, the merrier. Thank you again.
All right, good night. Moving on to old business A, meet the department town clerk's office.
And Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table old business item A, meet the department town clerk's office.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
B, meet the Department of Community Development Services.
Yeah, as well, I'd like to make a motion to table item B, meet the department community development services.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Discussion possible action Girls with Impact mini program MOU.
And Madam Mayor, I'd also like to make a motion to table item C, discussion possible action, Girls with Impact mini program MOU.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to new business A, discussion mill rate calculation, Director of Finance and Operations.
Okay, so I am going to give you a very high level idea of what's happening with the mill rate. We don't ordinarily do these type of overviews of the mill rate, but because we're in a reval year, you know that a lot of the taxpayers have received their assessment notices, and some of them are looking at 30% increases. So we just wanted to touch base on what's coming next rather than the panic of that 30% increase. So I'm just going to quickly go over when we're creating the mill rate, there's basically 3 steps to it. First one is going to be to determine that assessed value. That's what some people are seeing already on the real estate bills. Then, of course, we're going to calculate a tax levy. I'm going to do that very high level and talk about where we go with the mill rate. As we may know that there is an increase in the assessed values for real estate. The grand list is not finished. We have until the end of January to finalize that. So Stuart and his staff are working diligently on that. Real estate's looking at this point of coming in as an overall about 28%. That may be on the conservative side of an increase. Personal property, they're trying to wrap that up. Looks like a possible decrease, about 3% on that. And motor vehicles, on the other hand, is going to be looking at probably about a 10% decrease. So overall, grand list is looking at probably increasing around 22%. So not dwelling on that, I'm not doing the assessor's job tonight, but to talk about that, determining the tax levy. So what we're going to do is you're going
Mona,
to.
may I interrupt? Did
Yeah.
anything with the commercial?
Yes, the commercial would be in that real estate. So in that 28% includes commercial and residential.
Okay.
And of course, personal property would be commercial related. And we're looking at possible decrease, small decrease, around 3-4%.
Thank you.
Yeah. So on looking at the tax levy, starting with this year, we got a 95.2 million budget. 81.3 million is from taxes. So it's about 85% of your budget. So of course, as we're getting ready to go through the budget process, we haven't even started yet. We have to think about, things that will impact us, what's happening with revenues. Are we going to have less revenues? And I already know off the bat, we have the ARPA funds won't be available. So we're looking at probably $1 million impact on that. Of course, we'll look at all the expenditures, contracts, any additions, deletions. So basically what's going to happen is we'll take that $81 million of tax revenue, and let's say maybe like a what if we actually came in and we had a 0% increase in the budget. It could happen. So if we had a 0% increase, what we would be trying to raise for the tax levy is going to be, and I know this gets a little strange, but on that motor vehicle taxes, it's already locked in. We don't look at a mill rate on that. That's recently past year, the state 32.46. So all of those people that are having decreases in their motor vehicle, that 10% decrease really will see actual decreases in their motor vehicle tax bill. The value is going down, the mill rate never changes. So the remaining of tax levy has to be determined. So if we were going in with a 0%, I'd be looking at coming up with about 75 million of that 81. Yep, about 7 million comes out of motor vehicle. And it truly is, aside from all of these added items, you know, who's going to have exemptions and, you know, and I won't bore you with that detail, but it's almost a simple math calculation that I just take that 75 million that I need to break even and divide it by the grand list. So if I was doing a quick calculation, which I did, that at a 0% increase in a budget, that we would have a mill rate of 29.1. So if anybody knows, right now your mill rate is 35.92. So we're almost looking at that 7 mil decrease. So that's kind of, I know it sounds hard to believe, but we actually decreased the mill to get that same amount of money because the values are up. Of course, we could have greater increases in the budget, but we won't get into that right now. What that does to a homeowner, if I had my $400,000 home and it went up 30%, now my house is assessed at $520,000. My mill rate is not going to be at 35.92 anymore. It would be at 29.1. So this is a promising thing to just, I wanted to let people know, don't panic about the 30% increase, because what a 29.1 mil would be, a decrease of 7 mils, would actually be a 5% increase in your tax bill. A bill that was about $14,000 is now about $15,000. And that's the part that should be reassuring as we go through the budget process, is that we've seen the assessed values go up. And what we're really trying to do is find a mill rate that brings you the revenue we need to balance the budget. And that's really just the highlight that I wanted to make tonight, is to let people know that. Of course, I did a random, if we went up a 10% budget, hopefully we don't do something like that, but that still, you wouldn't have a 30% increase in your tax bill. You'd be looking at more like 18%. So keeping in mind that that mill rate is based on the revenue we need and the grand list that we get in. So I know it's a quick high level, but I think during a reval year, it's something that the public needs to know, so they don't panic and think that my bill is up 30%. There's a few steps that we have to do. Obviously, grand list isn't finished. That's the end of January. We haven't started the budget. So that's my little shout out to let people know what we're in for. So, any questions?
I think it's very helpful information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mona, I do have just a question on the motor vehicle portion. I thought that, and I could be wrong in what I assumed was right. I thought that the motor vehicle portion was capped at 32.46. However, if our mill rate was less, we can't charge more than our existing mill rate. So our motor vehicle mill rate would actually go down.
We would bring it to the 29.1.
Right. Okay. So it's not fixed. It's capped.
Capped.
That's what okay. Thank you. That's what I thought.
Yep.
Does that create a bigger deficit than
That's
your
when
numbers?
I was going so high level. I didn't want to do that. But
Right.
yes, what that would do is, instead of the 29.1, then we'd be factoring in that portion to make the marginal. So you probably end up closer to the 30. So
Yeah.
I thought if I did that late at night, they pull my
Understood.
Yeah, I just thought you said it was fixed, and I didn't want anybody to think that it was fixed when it
No, it
is
can be low.
capped.
Yes, lower is an option.
Okay.
That's if we get down to 29, Alan, right?
Well,
Correct.
we
A 0.
yeah. I mean, I think we'll be. I don't see it. Well, I'm optimistic we will not be at 32.46.
Yes.
Mona, here's the question. Can the 2 mill rates be different? Like on the vehicles portion versus the other portion? Can one be at 32 and can one be at 29?
I'm not sure if I follow you. So if we were at 0, we were at 29. When I
Right.
did a random 10%, we would have been at 32.8. So,
The vehicle portion. So to Alan's and his point, like if that, what you were assuming that it was 32, it stayed at 32, the vehicle portion, then you said zero increase, you get 5% increase in a bill.
right, the zero would be at 29, but we'd probably come closer to 30 once you balance out that motor vehicle. Of course, motor vehicle, again, not to get too technical, but is a smaller percentage of the grand list, so the impact of changing that would not be as dramatic as changing it on the real estate side.
Sure.
14 to 15 grand, I think, is a little bit more like a 7% plus increase, so it's a little bit more, but I'll submit the social media cowboys definitely blew that revaluation letter out of control because I didn't get to see it till very late, and when I read it, it was pretty clear as day that you didn't have to pop off about a 35% increase in my tax bill.
Correct.
Okay. Well, thank you. And let's see, just a couple things left. The mayor's report, I'll keep it short. I already eliminated a bunch of stuff. A lot has happened in January so far in terms of meetings at the local level. I'm happy to report that surrounding mayors and town managers and human and youth services departments are going to be meeting with Ray and I, might actually be next week, to discuss a collaborative response to addressing opioid use disorder and recovery and supporting needs in a collective basis. I don't want to use the term regionalized basis because sometimes that freaks people out. But there is room for greater efficiencies. So, if that can result in supporting more people in our health district and including Cromwell, which is outside of our health district and can save us money and doesn't and sort of helps our departments run a little smoother and frees up some of their hours, because we know our human services department is really always on the go. We'd like to explore that. CCM's Public Policy Committee met, and I am on that Public Safety Subcommittee again, and we will be meeting soon. I want to say next week, to look at the illegal use of ATVs and street takeovers, which fortunately has not become an issue here in Rocky Hill. You do see it along the Berlin Turnpike, but knock wood, we don't see that here. CROG Policy Board meetings have started, and I serve on that. We are ramping up for the legislative session. One of the things that's always an issue is municipal over-reliance on our antiquated property tax system. And we continue to have this conversation year after year. I had an opportunity to go to a meeting where Sean Scanlon presented on a need to look at different options. There were some things that in the past have been presented to state lawmakers, which would allow municipalities to look at alternative sources of revenue to sort of move a little bit away from the regressive property tax system, as well as ways to incentivize municipalities when there is some collaboration to again fund them in a unique manner to sort of offset how much needs to be collected in property taxes, because at the end of the day, the property tax system really is not sustainable, and so we need to start really taking a look at that. One of the other issues that's going to somewhat problematic is the needing a sustainable funding stream for our firefighters, because now there is that firefighter cancer fund. And one of the unique problems there is, though I believe they've solved the issue with the chemicals in the foam, but the turnout gear still has the PFAS in it. And we're putting firefighters in this turnout gear and they're getting sick over time due to exposure. So that's something that really needs to be addressed. Let's see what else. The Governor's Advisory Committee on Opioid Settlement Funds has been moving along nicely. And we anticipate our subcommittee on finance and compliance will be meeting more as towns start to submit plans on how they would like to use that funding. We did have some really great presentations by doctors at Yale who gave us some guidance specifically on the disorder. One thing that's interesting while we're talking about taxes is, again, this year, state lawmakers are looking to eliminate the motor vehicle property tax, which, as you know, would be problematic for us because it is an important source of revenue, although it's actually less because the mill rate is capped. We do still rely upon it. What you may find interesting is that there is a motor vehicle property tax task force who did meet, and their suggestions for making up that municipal revenue loss in the event that they do take it away would be potentially higher income tax rates for certain wage earners who make more than 100,000 or 100,000 or more, and knowing that that would not be enough to make up municipal revenue loss, they are also thinking about, and this is just, talk in a task force, proposed additional taxes on real estate and personal property taxes that would increase annually. So, I'm hoping that we will continue to have a seat at the table on these discussions because we don't want to see things go in that direction. And we're hopeful that things will move in a different way. Just so you know, it is time for the UROC Awards again. So if you have a name of a resident or a local business or a town employee that you feel has been doing a phenomenal job in our community and you want to give them a shout out, we have the nomination forms online on our town website as well as on my social media page. The deadline is February 1st to submit them, and recipients will be awarded on February 20th. We did discuss a little bit with the police chief about Atlas, the app, and I want to encourage everyone, if you don't already have the Atlas app, that you look for it on our town website and you download it, because that is where you will get the most up-to-date information that is important for you and important for you to stay informed about what's happening in town. And I just wanted to say, I have a question, actually, Ray. When we have just made these appointments for all of the boards and commissions, are meetings coming up this week? And if so, how are we notifying all of these new people? Because typically there's a little bit of a gap between the time that we make appointments and then the town sends out a letter. So should the town committees be connecting with everyone?
Typically, we send out letters. Daniel will send out letters to each member and then distribute to each appropriate department.
So there won't be any meetings in the interim?
There'll have to be meetings like planning and zoning, there's scheduled for meetings,
So planning and zoning is scheduled, I think, for this Wednesday?
Yeah.
So do the town committees then notify the new members of those meetings? Because they're not going to get your letters.
Good question. Typically it's done a little bit earlier than we did it.
Yeah.
Let me check the town charter on that. I know the charter is pretty specific as to the date when new appointments become effective.
Mm-hmm.
that's all I can do, but I'll dig into it tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, that concludes my report.
Michael?
Yeah.
Micah. I'll be short as well. The police department generator is very old, on its last legs. The Finance Director McKim and Facilities Director Phil Sayre have both worked together to submit a FEMA grant in the amount of $180,000 for the replacement of this generator. There have been several attempts in the past that have failed to get funding for this. I believe this is probably the best application that's been submitted, so we'll be waiting for a response from Department of Emergency Management and Health Services to the state. There's a 25% match required for that grant. The state has finally come to town hall to do a final audit of the high school grant, which was approved in 2012. It looks like the state auditors have anticipated this would take approximately 1 week to get all their information together. Mona and her finance department worked for several weeks gathering all of this information. There are enough records to fill a room. It's just phenomenal. So at least it will be finalized. I'm coordinating a meeting this month between town staff and Representative Wood, excuse me, to discuss some additional funding sources for a number of existing capital projects and initiatives that we've been working on for a couple of years now. Hopefully we can set something up very soon. The finance department will be sending out budget request packets to the department directors requesting information such as department narratives, goals, performance measures. We're also rolling out our new capital improvement format, utilizing a new software package, ClearGov, for capital requests. Again, capital requests for items costing more than $20,000. Each request will now include a priority ranking for the department, as well as a priority ranking for identified townwide initiatives, such as, for example, connections to sidewalks, from Main Street, Silas Dune Highway, improvements and sidewalks up at Century Hills, things like that. I'd like to recognize the pre-storm preparation team. Teamwork between the highway department, the fire department, and parks, grounds, and community development services, resulting in minimal storm drainage and culvert overflows during the January 8th and 9th storm event. A fantastic job they did getting out ahead of that storm. And then mini golf. You may recall last year, the library sponsored, the Friendsville Library sponsored a mini golf fundraiser at the library. Very well attended, especially the Friday night adult portion of mini golf. Again, the Friendsville Library are scheduling another fundraiser for March 15th, 16th, and 17th. And there is a flyer in your package, which I believe is on our website, or soon will be. The meat department presentation will be February 5th. I am not sure who we will be looking at next time. We have to do some rearrangements of some departments. What else? The Senior Center is sponsoring the Connecticut Department of Aging and Disability Services Aging Statement on Aging. They're proposing a talk. Let's see. Older Americans Act to ensure that the plan include priorities of importance to residents in the state. That will be held at the Senior Center, Wednesday, February 7th at 10 a.m. You can register by contacting the Senior Center. And there is a call for volunteerism to volunteer for the Affordable Housing Commission. There are currently 10 applications to fill 7 seats, but the town planner, Kim Ritchie, is still looking for additional volunteers. So you can reach out to her at the planning department. And also at 258-2761. Or at K Ritchie, RICCI, at rockyhillct.gov. And there will be a Rocky Hill Division Chamber of Commerce meeting tomorrow morning. So I will be attending that, the mayor may be there too. And as well as several department heads to meet some businesses that typically show up at these meetings. And I am out at this time.
All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, so we are on that adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Right.
Right.